Okay, this video is about defining the function that is the logarithm. So what is the logarithm as a function? So before you watch this video, you should have read section 1.2 at least in the textbook, and maybe 1.4 as well. So let's start with an exponential function. So this is a particular exponential function, f of x equals 2 to the x. And this function, because 2 is bigger than 1, the function is increasing as x gets larger. And so this function is strictly increasing, which means it has an inverse. Or another way to see this is it passes the horizontal line test. So this function has to have an inverse. And so there is some function, f inverse of x, that exists. It's just something. And we can think about like, what are some particular values for this function. So if I think about my function machine, this is the function machine 2 to the x. You know, if I plug in, let's say, 3 to this machine, what I get is the output is 2 to the 3, which is 8. And so if I think about the inverse machine, if I plug in 8 to this inverse machine, the output should be 3. So for example, f inverse of 8 equals 3. Similarly, if I were to plug in, let's say, 5 to this machine, the f machine, then I take in 5, I raise 2 to the 5th power, what I get is 2 to the 5th, which is 32. And so the same thing, if I input 32 into this inverse function, so if I take the opposite, the output should be 5. And so f inverse of 32 should be 5. And in general, what does it mean if I input a particular x and I output 2 to the x here? And let me call this 2 to the x is y. This is the y value. Then what does it mean to be a function inverse? It means when I input y into the function inverse machine, the output should be x. So if f of x, 2 to the x, is equal to y, then, let me say then, f inverse of y is equal to x. So let me say if f of x is equal to y, then f inverse of y is equal to x. And so this function, since it has an inverse, we can give it a name. We can call this the log of x. And since the base of this exponential function was 2, we'll denote that by log base 2 of x. And this is the definition of the log function for any base b. So if f of x is equal to b to the x, let me put a b here as a subscript just to make it more clear, then I have some exponential function here. If b is less than 1, then it might go the other direction, but I have some exponential function that passes the horizontal line test, and so it has an inverse. F inverse of x exists, and we call it log. And that's exactly how you should think of it. The definition of log is as an inverse function to an exponential function. So don't worry about memorizing certain properties of log or trying to memorize what log of certain things are. You should always think of it in terms of the exponential function because that's how it's defined. It's just the inverse function to the exponential function. So if you understand the exponential function, then you can understand the logarithm function as well.